Isaiah chapter 31 verses 1 and 3. He says, woe to those who go down to Egypt for help, and they stay on horses and trust in chariots because they are many, and in the horsemen because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek the Lord. For now the Bible says, the Egyptians are men and not God, and their horses flesh and not spirit. Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, and shall not see when heat cometh, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the hour of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. That man or woman shall not see when heat comes. The Bible says that cursed be the man that trusteth in man and maketh his flesh his arm. Sometimes when you're talking of putting your trust in man, some people think it's only trust in another man. No. Sometimes it is trust in your human ability. Now, in the book of Samuel, we're introduced to a very interesting story that the children of Israel at one particular point found themselves in a very unhealthy compromise. They go to God and they say, give us a king like other nations. God was their king. They were okay and should have been okay having Jehovah God as their leader. But they said, we also want to be like the other nations. Give us a king that he may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. The Bible says, and there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, and he had a son whose name was Saul. The Bible says he was a choice young man and goodly. And there was not among, listen, the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders upward, he was higher than any of the people. He's big. He has something about him. He has a charisma. You look at him and you say, this guy looks kingly. And guess what? The Hebrew word for Saul, the Hebrew pronounce him as Shaul. It means desired. He was the desired of men. But we're talking about the desire of the flesh. The Bible says that there was much war against the Philistines all the days of Saul. Always war between these two. Saul war. And the Bible says, when Saul saw any strong man or any valiant man, he took him unto him. The guy higher than everybody, the guy who looks bigger than anybody, when he wants to get an army, he doesn't look into the hearts of the men to war. He looks at the size of these men to war. He thinks in his heart that if you have the big-sized man, you have the man of ability, you have a guy who looks exactly like an army man, then that means you have a strong army man. Listen, armies are not built by strong men. Armies are built by men who have strong hearts. The brevity of a heart is stronger than the brevity of a body. There are people who look so big up here, but they are very little small boys. And there are people who are small like this, but oh boy, they are big. It's not what you see outside. It's what it is within. Every time you put trust in flesh, you open a door for a stronger man. One time they wake up and there's a champion of the Philistine. This guy was taller than anything Saul could ever choose. He was bigger than anything Saul could ever look for. And guess what? The man was against him, not for him. The biggest and most strongest people existing all flee. The Bible says they used to hear that Goliath is in the place and they start running away. But remember, the mightiest, the biggest, until the king has to put a contest. Who is the strongest man to deal with this fellow? I'll give him this, I'll give him that. Because every man who was strong physically was timid. And there's this little boy. He's looking after sheep. The Bible says, so ironically, he was the youngest. He did not have skill in war. He was a shepherd. He did not prepare. He was never trained. He didn't know how to handle a spear. He didn't know how to handle a sword. Nothing. That day of victory, he went to serve food. And he found a confused lot. He asked them, what's going on? Oh my goodness. They narrate the story. And the man with the heart of God, he walks to the king and he tells him, my lord, it is a small thing. Saul says to David, because of the mentality, he told him, you don't have the ability to go against this Philistine, to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth. But now listen to that. You are young. For him, he has been fighting since you were young. David said unto Saul, thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. When David says this uncircumcised Philistine, David is trying to tell you that from beginning to the end, his proof of victory, his guarantee of victory is a covenant issue. David is saying that it doesn't matter whether you are the most educated or not, whether you're the most exposed or not, you have a covenant. Whether you're the wisest or not, whether they love you or they don't love you, whether you look presentable or you don't look presentable, whether you're tall or short, it does not matter whether they have more resumes, they have a bigger plan, they have lived it longer, they have done this consultancy business for more than 30 years. You have a covenant. That's what David is trying to tell them. He's coming with sword and spear. I'm coming in a covenant. Saul is telling this guy to put on an armor. Even him, he can't go in it. But he thinks it's the best thing to protect a man's body. And David said, He put them off. And what happens? David kills the Philistine. Small little boy. And Saul feared David so great, and he began to hate him. When David is running away from Saul, he departed thence and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And everyone that was in distress, discontented, they gathered themselves unto him, and he became a captain over them. And there were with him 400 men, none mighty, none stronger. When you have God a certain way, you don't worry the people God gives you. You can make them something. Now Saul returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him, saying, now David is in the wilderness of Engedi. Now the Bible tells us Saul took, again listen to the mentality, 3,000 chosen men, the best he could find in all Israel. I love the next verse. Now the Bible says he came to some sheep pens along the road, and there was a cave there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. He went to relieve himself in a cave. And guess what? David and these men were huddled far back in this cave. Where is your trust? You have 3,000 men with you, but so as ironic as God can be, he leads the man to feel like relieving himself at the exact spot. The man enters the cave, and he doesn't know David and all the 400 are in there, in the same cave. The Bible says David's men whispered to him. Can you believe it? This is the day God was talking about when he said, I'll put your enemy in your hands. He says you can do whatever you want with him. Quiet as a cat, David crept up, cut off a piece of Saul's royal robe in the cave. He later comes to him and tells him, you know what? I could have killed you. David is trying to tell you and I something. It's not about the army you have outside. It's about the God you have within. Let me tell you, all you need and have is God.